All right, welcome to Immunity Makeover, the power that made the body heals the body 102. As we get started here, we're going to be talking about the fact that, yes, the power that made the body heals the body, that innate intelligence, our soul is constantly regenerating and reanimating our body, and that we are under the mindset, the awareness ahead of time that health is more than the treatment of symptoms, that we can use a drug, we could use another drug, we could use physical therapy or wait till something gets bad enough to have a surgery. But at all times, all those things are oriented to treating a symptom, whether it's lowered immunity, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, cancer, pain. All of these things, these drugs are all dealing with the symptom. They're not doing anything to push the body back up towards 100%. And if we want a healthy immune system and we want a healthy body and a healthy life, then we have to focus on those things that can get us back to 100%. And so the approach is under the awareness of the fact that about 90% of all disease is a result of lifestyle and environmental factors. So, what are we going to do to remove the cause of the problem? Instead of dealing with the symptoms, say altered immunity, we're going to then allow the body to regenerate and reanimate and heal so that we have the healthy immune response. Dealing with the 90%. So that's max living. That's the 5 essentials approach to health. And the reason that it is more robust, it's just more well-rounded than any other approach, is really because of its acceptance of the fact that the body needs no help. It just needs less interference. You know, the power that made us, that started out as the two cells that became one and then created the ball of cells that then formed the notochord and the brain and the whole spinal cord, and then the heart and all the blood vessels and all the organ systems that then controlled and coordinated everything inside the mother's womb, doing the best it could with what the mother provided it from her lifestyle, from her environmental impacts, both positive and negative. Then at birth comes out and then grows to hopefully the wonderful person that you are sitting here watching this. That body needs just less interference. The intelligence, the soul knows how to run our bodies. And yeah, I mean, this stuff has a shelf life, but our innate intelligence is that eternal piece of us that's unquantifiable. And it will do its best at all times to create homeostasis inside of our being with what we give it. And so we first of all, the reason the approach of the 5 essentials is so amazing, so life empowering, is that we recognize that the body was created with this nervous system, the computer being the brain, the spinal cord being the major hard wire, the fiber optics, so to speak, that then gives off the nerves to control and coordinate every organ and tissue in the body. And therefore, it is the regulatory system of all other systems. Therefore, if it is offline, if its signal is not functioning at 100%, you can be at 100% at the other 4 essentials. You could have perfect nutrition, no toxicity. Well, I mean, come on, let's be realistic. In our world, there's going to be virtually no way to be non-toxic, but as close to it as possible. You can have perfect exercise and oxygenation, and you can have the best mindset ever. But if the signal is down, the body is not going to function properly. And that's where that chiropractic piece really unifies the other essentials and allows them to be reanimated, regeneration to happen at that 100%. as long as someone has been checked to find out if they have subluxation, the misalignments of the vertebra that are choking off that life force connection between the brain and the body. And it can be as impactful and present in the newborn as it is in the 100-year-old who falls down the stairs. The child has a hard birth process, or maybe was in a restricted position for a while inside the womb that had torsion in its spine and everything that caused subluxation in utero, and then was born, and then possible birth traumas and all these things. It can happen from the moment of birth all the way up through until death. And the body, again, let's step back and say, it's always going to try to, there's more going right with the body than there is going wrong with the body until the moment of death. And so this removal, the finding, and then the correcting of subluxations only happens when you go to a chiropractor who then checks the spine and looks both segmentally and globally at the entire spine, like Max Living chiropractors do. And we assess each individual, whether it's a newborn baby or, again, the 100-year-old, and looking for these postural distortions, whether it's head tilt in the newborn, whether it's, the person who has sciatica or the person who has cancer. Let's step back and look at that person who has lowered immunity, right? Cancer, a sign of lowered immunity, right? Somebody who's always, every year, says, I get sick this time of year. It's important to be subluxation free to the person with no symptoms that appears to be functioning perfectly, just like the person who drops dead of a heart attack after having a clean bill of health with their cardiologist, right? It's as important to that person as it is to the newborn. It's as important to the person with cancer as without, with sciatica as without, because it is not based on the symptoms of dysfunction. It is about the health of the spine and the nervous system itself. It is a measurement unto itself. And the health of it determines the health of everything downstream. And so how does this stuff impact the health of moving someone closer to 100% function? Well, when comparing people who are under chiropractic care for 5 years or more, they showed a 200% immune competence compared to people who had not experienced chiropractic at all. And wow, like, why haven't I heard of this? Well, again, remember, your sickness is their profit. So there's never going to be a commercial about this unless you're hearing about it through the grassroots things like this, these workshops, these makeovers. It's never going to be globally promoted because it's going to rob them of the profits that they get from your lowered immunity. And so how does it happen? Well, it's after the adjustment, the release of interleukin-2, which upregulates it's this hormone, or I should say cytokine, interleukin, is going to impact the white blood cell activity of the natural killer cells that go around looking for bacteria, virally infected cells, cancer cells, and it upregulates their activity. And therefore, when we look again at the studies of the people 65 and older who were under chiropractic care for 5 years or more, now we're looking at the things that really affect your pocket, because so many people, again, it's too expensive to eat good. It's too expensive to go to the chiropractor. It's too expensive. It's all excuses that are valid when measured only unto themselves. But in reality, remembering back to 101, that 60% of the bankruptcies are due to major medical bills. So it's too expensive not to be healthy. So when we look at this, 60% fewer hospital admissions, right at 60% fewer days in the hospital when admitted. What about the last one? Mind-boggling, 85% less pharmaceutical costs. How would you like to know that you are going to experience 85% less pharmaceutical usage? And it's not just all of this is wrapped up, yes, and encompassed, I should say, or magnified by the fact that they were getting adjusted, but it's also their involvement in the lifestyle. in these offices that focused on the health of the whole human being and not just the treatment of the symptoms, not just adjusting for back pain or adjusting for sciatica or whatever. And so these are the things that you and your family tree can experience handing down generation after generation. Everything changed for you and your family when you became a part of a Max Living chiropractic office and started participating in the 5 essentials, started receiving chiropractic care, and the children then grow up experiencing health, the potential of health, the expectation of health, instead of lowered immunity runs in my family. We all have allergies. We all have the risk of cancer. We all expect to have heart disease, right? I mean, this is a common language that we hear, and it's one of the most devastating mentalities because it is the loss of hope. It is the expectation of disease that robs people of their ability to create change, to manifest the habits that create a different trajectory. You know, if an airplane gets off course by 1 degree over thousands of miles, they won't even end up in the same state in their trajectory. If I'm flying from Atlanta to Florida and I start off 1 degree off, by the time I get down to the Florida Keys, instead of landing over the Keys, I'm somewhere off, I don't know where. That's the same thing that happens with families who grow up not understanding, not having their GPS, their compass pointed in the right direction with their habits to manifest health. And so once we've gotten someone understanding this and we've checked their spines and we're moving them towards subluxation free, it's the awareness of where the immune system is comprised mainly. Now, of course, you know, we have the thymus and the spleen and the storehouses of the lymph nodes and things where our B cells, T cells, and things create these immunological reactions to create the immune system antibodies and to present these things to those B cells and things to create this response. But yet, this biggest storehouse of the immune cells, 70% in the guts. And so we've heard so much, everybody talking about gut health. Well, the reality is if we're going to have true gut health, then yeah, we got to be aware of it, and we have to understand what destroys it. Again, nature needs no help. It needs less interference. Our lifestyle and environmental factors are causing around 90% of all the disease that we experience, including lower immunity. So what are we going to do to remove the fuel on the disease flames, right? So really the detrimental awareness of the detrimental effects of antibiotics is really key, especially if, God forbid, a child is born and they have something going on and then very early on in life, maybe they're put on antibiotics and it's immediately destroying hopefully they're born, they had a regular vaginal birth so that they could be coated with the mother's whole preventative microbiome, and then she gave them the colostrum, which gave the buildup of all these immunoglobulins that she had developed throughout her pregnancy, being based on all the exposure that she had seen during that 9 months, programming that breast milk, that colostrum for that child's first gulp. So then it coats like a sticky substance the digestive tract, and then his breast milk is delivering the moment-to-moment antibodies to that child for their immune system, since they don't have one. Well, the destruction of that immune system coding through the antibiotics, boom, it's like napalm. It doesn't just kill the bad bacteria, it kills everything it comes in contact with. And so the repeated usage of that is the destructive capability. Every time the child tries to grow a new GI tract microbiome and immune system, bam, another round of antibiotics, another ear infection, another sinus infection, pink eye, whatever, all the different things that we see. Understanding that according to, let's see, let me pull up the exact stat here. According to the CDC, 47 million Courses of antibiotics are prescribed every year for infections that don't need them by doctors in emergency rooms around the country. That's 30% of all antibiotics right there. Understanding those things and always consulting and asking, can we do without? Understanding, not just always running and asking for those things because or the antibiotic courses, because we understand it's going to destroy 70% of the immune system. And so that awareness right there. Now, what about the conversation? Oh my gosh, yes, you have to have this life-threatening infection, and we've got to get this under control. Here's the antibiotic. Thank God for it. Now, what do you do during? What do you do after? Well, it's about rebuilding it immediately and replacing it immediately. And so it's about eating the probiotic, let's say Greek yogurts if there's not a dairy allergy, or raw sauerkrauts. And of course, now this is, again, we're not talking babies. We're not talking small children. We're talking about the kids who are already on foods, right? And adults. And so best thing for the infants would be mother just continuing to eat healthy herself, eat all these probiotic, life-giving foods, and then be breastfeeding. Now, stepping back into that example, then it's about us eating the probiotic foods throughout the course of antibiotics, and then after for very intentionally for at least 30 days, and then understanding that still, it's like planting an apple sapling. You wouldn't expect to get apples that year. You're not going to have a robust, beautiful tree bearing lots of fruit. You don't expect it. Well, you don't expect that out of your microbiome either. So it's about cultivating it, continuing to live healthy, continuing to eat those probiotic foods, minimizing the things that destroy the immune system, staying healthy so you don't have to have another course of antibiotics, using the antibiotics properly, not just stopping them arbitrarily when you start to feel better, then getting a repeated infection and having to go through the course again. If you have to use them properly. Eat as they say to. Don't do the things that they say not to. Follow it intentionally. Then it's then about understanding and just manifesting health so that you can grow a good, healthy microbiome. What's the next greatest offender that we have to our microbiome? Hands down, sugar is the number one insult. Understanding that in a 180-pound adult, 75 grams of sugar in a single setting. Now that's carbs, processed foods, pastas, cookies, crackers. So you have a Coke and you eat a sandwich, you're well over 75 grams of sugar. Now, what's it do? It suppresses the immune system by 50% for at least the next 5 hours. Now, God forbid you give that same thing to a 5-year-old or pizza in a Coke, or pizza in a Powerade, or pizza in a whatever, and the birthday party, or for snack, or for the chocolate milk and the chips and the pizza at school, or the applesauce, and all these things that manifest in 75 grams of processed carbs, and bam, how bad is their immune system suppressed, right? I don't know. Is it 80%? Is it for 10 hours? I have no idea. But the fact is that we know it would be, because dosage matters, right? I wouldn't give them the same amount of antibiotics I would if I was treating an infection that I would a 180-pounder. So how is it okay to give them the same amount of sugar? It's not. But it's the awareness of the detriment that brings enlightenment, the knowledge to change the habits. And so looking at, what does this impact on diet? Now, looking at this, this is a great slide. I love this. Back in 2000, so again, nutrition and your immune system. Back in 2000, Randy Journal, a professor of radiation oncology at Duke University, postdoctorate student Robert Waterland, designed a groundbreaking experiment because of its simplicity. They started with a pair of yellow mice known to scientists as the agouti mice, so called because they carry a particular gene, the agouti gene, that in addition to making the rodents ravenous eaters, yellow. It renders them prone to cancer and diabetes, right? Genetics, rendering them more prone to cancer and diabetes. So then Journal and Waterland set about to see if they could change the unfortunate genetic legacy of these creatures. Typically, when the agouti mice breed, they have offspring that look identical to the parents, just as yellow, just as fat, just as susceptible to the life-shortening diseases. The parent mice in Journal and Waterland's experiment, however, produced a majority of offspring that looked very different, like the brown regular mouse. These young mice were slender, mousy brown. Moreover, they did not display the susceptibility to cancer and diabetes and lived to a spry old mouse age. I love that. Moreover, so the effects of the agouti gene had been virtually erased. Remarkably, the researchers effected the transformation without altering a single letter of the mouse's DNA. The approach was instead radically straightforward. They changed the mom's diet. Starting just before conception, Journal and Waterland fed the test group of mother mice a diet rich in methyl donors, small chemical clusters that can attach to genes and turn them on or off. These molecules are common in the environment and found in many foods, including onions, garlic, beets, leafy greens, food supplements that are given to pregnant women, things like the things we give to pregnant women, folic acid and things like that, to make sure they don't have neural tube defects, right? We understand that literally the formation of a healthy spinal column, thus healthy nervous system, is affected by the B vitamin content of a mother's diet. Well, this study showed that literally you could shut off genes by changing the diet of the mother mouse during gestation. Mind-blowing. But here, folks, if it's true that you can turn off the genes, is it also true that you can turn on the genes? Absolutely. If a diet void in these precursors, these methyl groups that were able to genetically modulate in a positive way the genes that made them susceptible, that literally the mouse was born without those defects. Amazing. This kind of nutrition can turn it on. What are the anti-angiogenic foods? One of the things we've got to talk about with cancer is that, and lowered immunity in general, is we've got to step back. So let me back up here. I apologize. So let's talk about the sugar impact. Let's go all the way back there. Here we go. Sugar. One of the reasons that sugar is such a devastating thing is it limits our immune system. Yes, natural killer cell activity. But also, one of the things that happens during, remember, we want to focus on the three causes that happen, right? A deficiency, a toxicity, or a lack of control. We've dealt with the control of the body through the chiropractic and getting the body subluxation free so that we can have that life force flowing and connecting the body. Then we look at what we're giving the body as building blocks. The sugar itself, when an environment, let's say, is deficient, let's use the most common one that'll lead us into our other essential, oxygen, due to obesity or diabetes, limiting the amount of blood flow that's getting to a tissue, then that tissue or organ is deficient in oxygen. So then it has to have ATP. It has to produce energy at a cellular level. That's what all of our reactions run off of. That's our energy currency. So that ATP is produced, and it typically will go through this electron transport chain, citric acid, Krebs cycles, and we're going to produce these 36 ATP. Well, when from a deficiency or a toxicity, the environment here, a deficiency in oxygen, causes the cell to have to ferment sugar as its source of fuel. It's very inefficient. It's called lactic acid fermentation. the end product being that lactic acid, and that creates an acidic, toxic environment, which then further damages the mitochondria. Not only is it deficient in oxygen, not able to function properly, increasing the toxicity of the cell. Now, its cellular respiration, producing of energy, is now creating a toxic byproduct. And we've all experienced, this lactic acidosis thing, not to that systemic effect, but when we get sore from exercise, right? When we get oxygen deficient, then from exercise, we create that temporarily. A couple of days later, all that's been pumped out, oxygenation of the tissue is restored, and we're no longer sore. The muscle is rebuilt. Well, when it's chronic, in things that don't signal pain like muscles do, things like organs, pancreas, liver, kidneys, until there's a lot of tissue damage, they typically will not be signaling the pain consciously to the body. The brain's aware of the dysfunction, it's trying to do what it can, but that environment becomes more and more toxic. So now, sugar. If your bloodstream is latent with sugar, as the genetic mutations happen to the mitochondria, the environment becomes more toxic. That cell is trying to survive. It's not yet cancer. It is trying to survive. So it begins to replicate faster and faster to deal with its toxic environment, getting more and more damage, further getting out of control, thus creating the cancer as a survival mechanism for that cell, the environment it's in, tissue. Now, if it goes on long enough, under this, it continues to get more and more toxic, more and more sick. It needs more and more blood vessel flow so that it can get more and more sugar. So again, it's got so much damage going on in the cells that it's handed down, it's it's recombinated or regenerated itself, divided. It's passing on that mitochondrial defect in that environment. And so now all of these things are going through the dysplasia, the metaplasia, all the sequence of events to get to cancer. And then now it needs more sugar receptors. And so it will produce a cell membrane that has approximately 12 to 16 times more sugar receptors. Now, very efficient at sucking in the sugar. It's mind-boggling. One of the things that really ticked me off about going to my mom's consultation and asking the oncologist, hey, what can we do? What should we do from a nutritional standpoint, exercise standpoint? What should we be doing to support her and be on the team? Well, eat nutritious food and avoid grapefruit. Because apparently, it might limit the detoxification by the liver of the sugar-based, platinum-based chemotherapy that they were recommending. That's it. That's how void of knowledge and true understanding they are, even though they're very aware of the usage of the PET scan to track for metastasis by having the person lie still and giving them a radioactive isotope of sugar and then passing them through a scanner to see where they light up like a Christmas tree, meaning that's where the metastasis is gone. Because they know that the cancer absorbs it 12 to 16 times, so it's going to be brighter and brighter right there in those pockets than anywhere else in the cell. But yeah, we don't counsel on that. We don't make people aware that you could starve it. Supposedly, chemo's just going to work or it's not. The radiation's just going to work or it's not. Consume a lot of calories. You're going to have to fight. What? Absolute lunacy. Folks, this is the awareness that you can have about sugar's impact on giving your body, let's say that a little bit of cancer, we all have cells that are going awry and then they go into cell apoptosis, P53 gene kicks in, bam, or they, the immune system recognizes them, targets, kills them. But we want to avoid the angiogenesis, that these cancer cells are signaling out to the body to grow blood vessels so that they can get their sugar. So these are the foods, the writer downer, the take a picture of her slide that will, again, give your body the things that will, maybe these methyl groups, the different things that, again, help shut down this process that the cancer cells are trying to recruit And so that's a part of the nutrition that will help you avoid that angiogenesis, that process of the cancer trying to get those blood vessel nutrition. Now, what else can you do? What about the core plan of nutrition? This is the way that we should all be eating. And it's, again, it's a plan. Diet is a cuss word. And because it's just nasty. I mean, it just means you were going to start it. You've got an end date, and it's to deal with some symptom. And then you're going to quit it, and you're going to go right back to your old habits, and you're going to have your old problem back. When we have a lifestyle of eating, then we empower the body to get rid of the deficiencies and remove the toxicities, and therefore restore control of the environment back to the body. And so healthy fats, full fat dairy, naturally raised animal products, very ancient grains, looking at things like aramuth and kamut and quinoa and things like this buckwheat. Eating a variety of fresh fruits and vegetables, really trying to get to that 70-30 or 70% of your food is fresh fruits and vegetables. Get another 10%, maybe nuts and seeds, and then grass-fed organic meats, fresh wild-caught fish, no farm-raised stuff, and your dairy also being that grass-fed 100%, and then your eggs, of course, being completely free-range, not just outdoor access or vegetarian fed or anything. The advanced plan is, again, this is all on maxliving.com, very easily and accessible. The advanced plan takes it a step further by removing all grains and then limiting only to the low glycemic index fruits and vegetables, berries, Granny Smith apples, lemons, limes, grapefruit, and really cutting back, again, helping the body be from a whole food standpoint in a state of ketosis, limiting the blood sugar, robbing anything like cancer or, again, bacterial infections. What are they going to feed off of? The simple sugars in the blood. So we want to, again, upregulate our immune systems, not be teetering around that threshold of, because we know 75 grams of processed food does it. What does 50 grams do? I don't know. 30% immune suppression? I don't know. It's not good. So again, minimizing that processed food, maximizing the bioavailability of the nutrients that we need to remove those deficiencies and minimize the toxicities. I love the 16-8 method of boosting the immune system through intermittent fasting. So that's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing typically for me, where quit eating at dinner, and then don't eat till around 2 o'clock in the afternoon next day. And remember that it's break fast. So that first meal is still breakfast. And so it needs to be a healthy fat and protein oriented, definitely no carbs that really processed food that really spikes your blood sugar, brings you back out of that ketosis. If you'll really make that first meal very minimal, a low glycemic index, you're going to stay in ketosis on throughout probably the rest of the day, burning fat, and then starving any cancer that's trying to get a foothold in your body. Another supplement, minimizing deficiencies, vitamin D is a brilliant slide showing that the blood levels recommended by the USDA and FDA or whatever, it's 25 nanograms per deciliter, which all that does is prevent rickets, and bone softening disease was experienced by people on ships who didn't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, and all these things. And so it does nothing. The true health benefits, the immune supportive benefits that we've heard about for the last 3 years of vitamin D happen closer in that 60 to 90 nanograms per deciliter range. And you can read right there the list of cancers and other diseases, MS, things like this that are limited by the proper levels of vitamin D. So, of course, go get your blood test, know where you're at, supplement with them accordingly. You can do things to load dose to get there as quickly as possible. One of the things, though, that we really greatly promote is starting with the basics first. And that's why we really promote, even on an immunity workshop, where we could be talking about NAC, and we could be talking about the IM or immune support, or we could be talking about all these other high-end things, like, granted, you want to add in zinc, of course. But yet, these are the basics that if your body is deficient in these, you're opening the door for your body having to compensate and therefore create further toxicities, allowing the body to get further out of control. So start with the daily essentials. Ask yourself the question, have you eaten 5 servings of fresh fruit and 5 servings of fresh vegetables every day for the last 7 years? If that answer is no, then you're most likely deficient in these things. Vitamin D being one of them, and Max Living's brilliant in the way they design things by putting the healthy bacteria in with the vitamin D to optimize the absorption of that. Realizing that the omega supplement is in here in these little packets that come in this box, women's and men's daily essentials, that provides you the healthy fats that allow you to absorb the vitamin D and reduce the omega oil deficiencies. Most people are at about 20-1 when they should be right around that 4-1 or below in that omega-6 to omega-3 range. They're like 20-1, way out of balance with their healthy fats. And so this omega supplement is right there to be paired with that vitamin D. And then there's the multivitamin and mineral in the daily essentials. There's also the magnesium supplement, which most people will be deficient in. It's chronic, epidemic, with all kinds of metabolic implications. There's at least 300 reactions that I know of that are involving magnesium in the cellular reactions level is required. So being deficient, you're limiting hundreds and hundreds of things. And then, of course, the multi-B vitamin, not only for the neurological support, but the energy support, everything. So it's all right there in a daily packet. Take it together with some food, and bam. So I take this at lunch on the days I'm fasting, or with breakfast on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is a minimum standard. Now, of course, we're talking immunity. We're also going to be supplementing with vitamin C and zinc. And then if we feel like, hey, we're getting something, we're having a respiratory infection, then we're adding in AC to upregulate our glutathione production. That's that precursor that allows us to produce N-acetylcysteine, the precursor to producing proper glutathione levels. We're reducing the toxic exposure by following these guidelines here. Again, this references the things that we need to do with our food, with our homes. Again, write her down or take a picture of her. You go back and pause on this slide and write it all down. Avoiding plastics, things like this, to reduce the things that are going to limit the power of the body to heal the body. The detoxification system, I love this in that we understand the parts of this. And one of the things I want to, because again, you can pause this, you can read the different things that are required for glutathione production, the major parts of the body. But I want to get to the end where the gallbladder removal, that gallbladder is meant to be the storehouse of bile, and supposed to be where a lot of the toxins that are being detoxed, the fat-soluble toxins, they're being detoxed from the blood, are put into the bile to be then secreted or squeezed out by the gallbladder to help emulsify the food that's coming in from the stomach, while the pancreas is also putting in those enzymes to digest it. All this is supposed to happen. So that's a limited thing. It's more of a leak out of bile. It's not being able to be squirted out like that if your gallbladder has been removed. And that's why a lot of people experience you eat much greasy food. Where are you at in 20 minutes or less? Literally, it's gone from there all the way through you, right? And so not emulsifying the fats. Well, that's again limiting the ability to detox also. So I really recommend for those who have that problem, they're no longer whole, they have their gallbladder removed. Then they supplement with liver gallbladder from Designs for Health. So it gives them some of the digestive enzymes and the bile salts with every meal to be able to properly digest their food, bring in those fats, A, D, E, and K, fat soluble vitamins. You're not going to absorb them unless you have proper bile production, proper fat absorption. So another thing, again, looking at the deficiencies in the body that cause the toxicities like the lactic acid damage to the mitochondria being started from, say, obesity or diabetes, clogging the blood vessels that are going to that tissue, because most people don't exercise. And they don't realize that the skeletal muscle consumes 80% of blood sugar. So diabetics, bam, light bulb, right? If you're not using your skeletal muscle on a daily basis, say you got a desk job, you commute, you get home, you're mentally exhausted, blah, blah, blah. You think exercise is optional. Now all of a sudden you're making your pancreas have to produce that much more insulin to try to force the sugar into somewhere. And it's just not going to happen. That's why things, insulin insensitivity gets there the same way. I mean, we see it all the time with drugs. People experience with opioids, right? They start out, a little bit will do, and then all of a sudden now they're hooked and they're using, twice as much as they had to before to feel any pain relief. Same thing here. That twice the amount of insulin to try to drive that in because there's this chronic exposure, this toxicity in the body from blood sugar becomes a poison. So using that skeletal muscle to really support your immune system, understanding that when we sweat profusely every day, the skin is like one of the third, fourth largest detoxifier in the human body. And so again, we're not getting out those water-soluble toxins if we're not sweating every day and breathing really heavily and things. And the properly functioning blood flow, proper lung expansion, changes in that tidal volume, that little bit of air that's always in the lungs, keeping them inflated. If you're not recycling that, it's like a stagnant air pond, so to speak. And it's stagnant because you're not having massive expansion of those lungs every day to create a little bit of turnover in that air. Then you're creating an environment for breeding bacteria and viruses and pathogens and things like this. So again, 40% reduction in upper respiratory infections. We want to create the faith over the fear through the 5 essentials lifestyle, because so many people will discount these type of topics, these workshops on holistic, vitalistic empowerment of people, saying, quote, that's not scientific. Well, what could be more scientific than a true understanding of how the body works and simply supporting the body to remove deficiencies, to remove toxicities, thus allow the body to do its job, to exercise properly, to eat properly, to have the right amount of water. Hey, forgot that one. How about understanding that part of nutrition is hydration, 1/2 ounce per pound of body mass. So you weigh 200 pounds, you need 100 ounces of water a day. If you get out and sweat hard and exercise like you should, then you're going to need a little bit more for sure, maybe 120 whole gallon. And so that's the way to stay hydrated and quantify it, whether it's my 5-year-old son who only weighs 40 pounds or whether it's the 200-pound me. But we want to get back to this understanding of the principles that govern health, like right there. How to quantify your proper hydration. What's limiting your immune system? What are you doing that's causing the damage? The mindset shift of empowering you with knowledge to create new habits. With knowledge comes responsibility. But with that embracing of the responsibility, you change the trajectory of everyone you can pass it down to. as long as they then incorporate it, right? If we raise generations who aren't participating in the current healthcare, sick care model, then we can create true healthcare and create generations expecting, having less fear, having more faith, and understanding how the 5 essentials can empower them to live to their God-given health potential. Hope this has been amazing for you and empowering, and we'll see you back here the next time, either on Health a Second Opinion or for your next Max Living workshop.